So I'm going to start this topic on how to handle fixed bid projects in Agile. So most of the times, people have the understanding that I mean, agility means embracing change, and that means it will be very difficult to fix the cost, time, and schedule. So it becomes very difficult to think that in case of the fixed bid where the requirements are defined at the beginning, how is it possible to have the agility at the same time? So this is what I'm going to discuss as part of this topic. At that point of time, though we started working in Agile, but at the same time, we were not very clear about different flavors of Agile, and fixed bid was one of them. So this was a proposal came from a Singapore-based startup, which was trying to start a e-commerce website in Singapore. So they came as a client to us, and based on the discussions we had with them, we signed a contract, and the idea was to make sure that we will be able to provide them the website uh, within 2 months. So if at that point of time when everybody promised 2 months, then even though whatever be the case, we were thinking that that may be too aggressive. I mean, we didn't even know what are the requirements. So because some other people were working on that project. Um, so after that, construction started, and um I mean, and it became clear that whatever things were promised at the beginning may not be the same as part of the execution of the project, and we started seeing certain signs in the project that certain things are not working. So what we started observing was that people were staying late, and uh, as whatever the scope was defined was elongated, uh, I mean, without any end. Uh, after that, it was around 2 months, and basically everybody was looking at the time, and things were not progressing as desired. So that's where basically my boss asked me to start looking at that project, and my focus was to see what's going on, what are the issues, and then see what can be done at that particular time. When things were not working well, definitely the client was very pissed off, and because certain timelines of the execution were defined based on the construction itself. So things were not going fine for the project and as well as for the customer. So when I entered into the project, I basically started taking certain observations and thought like why it is happening. And what I found was the major and important problem was unclear requirements. And you may think that that may be a kind of usual case, and it may happen. But then I started thinking why it is happening, why we land into that kind of situation. So So if you look at this um, manifesto for Agile software development, one of the key element here is responding to the change over following a plan, and that means we basically try to embrace the change, and and that become a kind of paradox. So uh, I th- I thought that is a similar kind of situation. the project team felt, because what they thought was, uh, even though it is fixed bid, but because it is an agile project, it may happen that the requirements may not be clear and may get clear when we start working in the sprints. So, and they were also thinking that requirements may get changed because that's what we are promising anyways. So that means at the beginning of the project there was no clear focus on making sure that we have a clearly defined scope, or at least a kind of understanding what exactly we're trying to build. So if you are facing that kind of scenario, when basically uh, I mean uh, things are open ended, then definitely you will be getting into the issues. Another issue which I observed was, uh, most of the people were coming from the waterfall background at that point of time, and our focus was to see how that the things which used to happen in waterfall can happen in agile sprints as well. So one part of that is, I mean, definitely we were delivering as part of the sprints, but at the same time, when it comes to deploying to the production and doing the UAT, all the things which are necessary, or non-functional requirements. So these are very necessary parts of the software deployment into the production. But what we were trying to do was, we were leaving it to the end. So when you basically move everything towards the end and keep on postponing the issues, then it means you are expecting a big bang. So you are trying to make sure that some big bang testing will happen, and everything will go right. But based on our experience, we have seen that doesn't really happen. So even though we feel that everything will go fine, but then as we accumulate everything towards the end, things don't go fine. So then I thought, what can be done in this case? I mean, this is not a particular case uh, which is happening for that project only. It can happen anywhere. So the key issues which came out into the picture were that, first of all, because we were thinking that it is an agile project, but at the same time fixed bid, the requirements were not very clear, and that means you are keeping those things open ended, and that doesn't work in the reality. That is the one issue. And second issue was to make sure that how to basically provide the agility which we trying to promise, or which we are promising using agile software development, by basically making sure that we have the we are basically fixing the size as well, and but at the same time we are providing the agility. So how to do that? So we thought about it, and some of the problems which came up were, first of all, many times it happens that, uh, at least from the waterfall perspective, the whole requirement analysis takes months, and sometimes because of certain myths around the agile manifesto. One of the is like working software over comprehensive documentation, and basically what people translate it into is that there is no documentation required at all, and which also means that they are not looking for any kind of analysis as well. So minimum analysis. So that means whatever the analysis which you are doing earlier in 2 months, now you're trying to squeeze it in 1 or 2 days. and that may have the catastrophic effects. So that those were the some of the points which we were thinking at that point of time, and based on that we came up with some recommendations. So instead of thinking that we will keep the scope fixed, we said that we will keep the size fixed. Fine. So for example, if we are saying that we are having a project of 2000 story points size, so that size is fixed, and in between you can basically keep on moving this user stories as and when you want. So instead of scope, that means the content itself, we are saying the size of that will be fixed. Fine. uh, so another thing is, as I mentioned, is like how to get the clarity in the requirements. And as you see that if you are not having a good enough analysis about the sizing, about the clarity in the requirements as well, I mean, based on the clarity only you get a good size as well. So you need to have at least some kind of analysis which should be sufficient to give you a understanding about the size of the application, and at the same time you get to know what are the kind of features you need to develop as part of it. So instead of having a big upfront analysis of each and everything, what about having a just enough analysis to make sure that we have an understanding about the requirements, we are able to do the sizing, and based on that basically we identify the size of, for example, 2000 story point, and then in the iteration we basically evolve those stories, or uh, I mean, do the backlog refinement and get the detailing of those stories. So let me give you an example. So for example, in an application you have a login page. Fine. The login page, you may try to understand what kind of login page it is. So you say that it is a simple login page which will be having login ID and password. So you understand, fine, this is the kind of functionality which you are expecting out of that. And what are the kind of things which are out of scope? The out of scope is like we don't want to have the social networking logins as part of the release one, and that makes sense. But now so with that I think we get a kind of sense, yeah, that we understand your point, that and this is the kind of size you're looking at. So based on that we can have the understanding about the size of that particular user story. Fine. But as far as the detailing is concerned, like detailing means what kind of error message will be coming in case I enter user ID password as wrong password. So what is the exact message which we be expecting out of that? So that may be part of the backlog refinement further and detailing further. So you need to have enough information about the user story so that you can size, but not uh, too much details which you cannot get at that point of time. Fine. So how to do that? So that is the next point, which is about when you start a new project. So it is very important to have a kind of workshop between the team as well as the customer, and basically have a kind of brainstorming explanation about the requirements, identify the user stories, uh, non-functional requirements, everything which is possible to define as part of the sizing exercise. So you identify what are the requirements, and you do the sizing as part of that exercise. And this exercise may have maybe of the duration of 1 week, or maximum 2 weeks, depending on the size of the project, or it can be smaller, even smaller than that as well. So all I'm trying to say is that you need to do the workshop, what should be the duration of it, it depends on the site, project to project. So based on this workshop, you define, okay, what kind of the size of the project is in this case, fine. And based on that, uh, we come to know that the size of this project is, for instance, 2000 story point, and now the size is fixed. So as you see, I mean, if something is already filled, a full glass of water, if it is already filled, then you cannot put more water into it. And that is the same similar kind of situation for any fixed bid project as well. So if you have already done the sizing and the customer is looking for a change, which is a kind of addition into the current requirements, so that means we need to make sure that is treated as a kind of addition, and basically it means it needs to have a change in terms of the budgeting, uh, and in terms of the resourcing. So I think it is pretty clear, like in case you want to do any addition, so in the already full glass you cannot put more water, so you need to add more resources around it, whether it's time, money, or whatever, fine. And the second aspect is very, very important over here. That makes a lot of sense, fine. In case you want to add something, then definitely you want to treat it as an addition, or this change, and basically you will be uh, doing some budgeting for that. But what about the agility? How do I make sure that whatever the promise you are giving to me about agile project is served as well? So that is the most important aspect here as part of this one. So what we are trying to say is that because the size is fixed, you can make the changes in terms of the exchange of the requirements. So for example, you're thinking, fine, this is, I think based on my understanding about the requirements right now, I don't think this is a higher priority user story. So instead of that, I found the new one, which is even more important. So why don't we put it in the backlog? Fine, you can put in the backlog, but at the same time you need to take out whatever is the lower priority user story. So as you see, like, you can do the exchange of the user stories, but if you want to add, then definitely you need to understand that requires new resources. So these are the some of the aspects of the fixed bid project which needs to be considered. One is that you, instead of doing fixing the scope, you fix the size. How to fix the size? You need to have a kind of workshop to basically understand what the project is all about, because without understanding that, you cannot come out with a size, and accordingly you cannot come out with a time and other things. So that is important. In order to get the size, you need to have a workshop with the stakeholders from the client, and have an understanding about the requirements, which uh, which give you enough understanding about the sizing. As you fix the size, what you can do is you can always provide the agility in terms of movement of the user stories. If you are having a new user stories which is higher priority, you can take out something which is lower priority, and that can be on the continual basis. But then when you're trying to think in those terms, you basically look at the impact as well. So it's not like just because so that basically as part of the sizing exercise. So if you see that even though the change is very small, but the impact is huge, so then the size of the user stories will be large as well. So so while making the exchange, one need to make sure that it is not impacting the project overall or the application overall, and it is the valid change in the application. So these are the things, if we look at from the fixed bid agile projects perspective, I think that the fixed bid agile projects can be done. So that's all from my side. I'm open to questions now.
ShriKant, hi. Sutap here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Quick question. You talked about fixing the size upfront, which makes sense that fix the size upfront and negotiate later if there are any changes. But fixing the size upfront, are you saying that we'll detail it out to the last level, or are you saying that we will fix the size at a kind of high level?
So as I mentioned, like we are leaving the detailing towards the backlog refinement. And that's where I gave the example of the login page in which you find the enough details to do the sizing. But as far as the detailing is concerned, that is left as part of the backlog grooming.
So here, and I understand what you're saying. The only thing is, the doubt in my mind is that if we are not detailing it out earlier, how do we give a size? Are we saying that we kind of do it at high level? And so any thoughts on that? For example, if I know that the login page and I don't know the details and somebody says that how big or how small it is, how do I do the sizing?
So that's where I said like detailing enough so that you can give the size. So
okay.
So the whole point is that it is up to you. What is the what kind of level of details you need to do the sizing. So from my perspective, for a login page, I think understanding that it will be a simple login page with user ID and password without having a social login. So that kind of stuff, I can understand that will help me in doing the sizing of that page. As far as detailing is concerned, what kind of message, error messages, and other stuff, that can be decided later.
Sounds good. And of course, the other thing which I had in my mind was when we are detailing it out later, real time, and considering that we have already fixed the size, if there are any, while discussing, we realize that there are some conflicts. How do we resolve that?
So, I mean. So what we can done, I think that it depends on engagement to engagement. So definitely it's a very valid question how to do the conflict resolutions. And to me, the conflict resolution is all about defining whether it's the right change or not. So it's all based on the trust. In case there is not enough trust between the team and the customer so far, so then you have a kind of defined governance which makes sure that that kind of understanding takes place during those discussions. But if there is enough trust, then those things really don't create any problems. What I've seen is.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah. Anybody else? Your feedback, does this make sense? Yeah. Rahul? Rahul, your voice is breaking.
One question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, ShriKant, how does the impacts the bid project? Like longer or shorter to keep in mind? You getting me?
I didn't get your question. Sorry.
How the fixed bid project will behave in terms of it's a short term duration or a longer term duration? what things we need to keep in mind with respect to duration of the fixed bid project?
So generally, what we generally recommend to even the customer that having a very big delivery, uh, of any project doesn't make any sense, because that is a basic idea of agile anyway. That I mean. You can do this, you can define the sizing of the first phase, for example, and the next phase can be estimated or sized later. So in my view, it is important that whatever sizing is done, it's for the short term and not for the long term, because anyways these days long term sizing doesn't help a lot, because by the time you reach at that point of time, things change a lot, considering the time we are living in right now. So having short term phases or the releases and sizing them should help.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense because it becomes two things as you mentioned. The requirements might change, and then long-term project will have its own difficulty of um estimates or how long it will
as
work, and
as
then
as you think, as you try to think longer term, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, you can see till if you think about yourself or myself, I can see just 200 200 meters. After that things start becoming hazy, and that is the same situation in any projects as well. So as you start looking very much far ahead, the things start becoming hazy. So instead of that, try to see what till the time till the point you can see, uh, deploy that and get the feedback, and based on the feedback you go ahead. So that is a major point about.
ShriKant,
Yeah,
this is Ujjwal.
yeah.
See, project releases I can understand. So primarily, we would like to have frequent releases, but project duration can be long. So you have products which are running for years, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
generally,
definitely,
bigger companies, right?
definitely.
So suppose if a client comes in and says that okay, we want to have an 1 year or 2 year engagement, and we want to do a fixed bid application, right? So we might not know upfront what are the requirements, what are it. So how do you suggest going in such a scenario?
So
So
that's
the engagement is going to be 2 years long. Uh, it's going to be executed in a agile mode, but fixed bid.
that's where I
So,
said, as
Shrikant, from
yeah.
yes, Sutab here. From my experience, because I have seen such big projects in my previous company, typically what happens is that engagement is when you do fixed bid, you are not doing it for the whole 2 3 years. You will typically define releases and you will talk in terms of releases. So you'll create some buckets which are not very long term and not very short term. Typically, it will be you'll be talking in either in terms of quarters or in terms of releases.
Yeah, so you will have deliveries definitely, I'm sure. So every bucket or every billing would be quarterly or based on something, but engagement is longer, right? So
So
engagement
even
might
in
so
that, yeah, even in that engagement, what you will do is that you will still try to define something which is not very long term. You will say that okay, looks like our first release will be 6 months down the line or 1 year down the line, or not the release, of course. I mean, at least the end of the first engagement will be maybe 6 months down the line, and let's try to fix the iron triangle for that, something like that.
yeah, when we talk about delivering value, right, it should be like 1 year or 2 year project, but it should something like deliverable should happen 4 months, 6 months down the line. So what
So
Sutab said makes
actually,
sense to me.
I think these days clients also understand that the engagement can be for years, but at the same time, when we are talking about delivering something, you can see far ahead that much only, and after that, things start becoming hazy. So so I think what I've seen is that people also move towards the TNM based projects as well after the fixed bid and vice versa. So depending on what work they have, they continue that engagement for a long time. But as far as any fixed bid project is concerned, you define like how what kind of duration is required for reaching some kind of deliverables, and then basically you extend that engagement further. So any other questions from anybody else? I think that's it. And thank you very much for joining this webinar. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, ShriKant.
Thanks.
Bye bye.